Hello, everyone.
Hello, hi.
Thank you so much for coming and for joining. My name is Agatha Appleton-Sass.
Hi, and I'm Robbie Appleton-Sass.
And we're Run Studio. Today we have a very, very exciting, creative, wonderful session that we want to talk to you about. I will be mainly talking. We have another laptop there.
Yes.
So Robbie will be on the chat. So make sure that if you have any questions, you post them
into the chat
and we will address them, or Robbie will answer them live specifically to you. So please say hi, tell us where you're from, tell us maybe your website address, because we love to look people up after the session, and also social media handles. So if you could do that for us on the chat in the platform, that would be great. Just say hi. Robbie is monitoring it. We just said hi as well. So we can definitely connect.
Absolutely.
I'm going to slowly start, but we're mainly just going to start with just the introduction of what we're going to be talking about, because we have a very creative session, but we also want to give people a little bit of time. So that's something to sort of think about in terms of, just waiting maybe 2 more minutes.
Yes, the big reveal of what this session is about today.
The big reveal. But I think what's important is that we want to talk about brand identity and maybe make you realize how important it is for your online presence. It's super creative. It's probably one of the most fun things.
Absolutely.
So you really, really enjoy it, but it's incredibly important for buyers and customers to see that you have a cohesive presence and that they can recognize your brand, that it's always consistent. And what we're going to do today is basically give you steps, very, very clear steps in terms of what to do and what it is. And at the end of the session, you will be able to build your own brand identity. So we're very excited to share it all with you. So just a little bit about us whilst we're waiting for maybe a little bit more people to join. I'm Agatha, and this is Robbie, and we specialize in online thinking and digital communication. For those of you who don't know us, we teach business owners and organizations how to improve their online presence. That's something that we specifically were doing for the past 13 years, really, in the film industry. So we have worked with marketing teams and PR teams and sort of how to promote films, Universal Studios, BBC Films, working title, Film 4, a very creative, wonderful environment, but a lot of pressure because you see the films on billboards and in magazines. So we kind of feel quite familiar in terms of the marketing. We thought, goodness, we know it all, from very big studios to really small ones. Why don't we just share it with smaller businesses? And especially in 2020, we directly helped 100 businesses, but we also had sort of webinars and open sessions for 3,000 businesses, and they were international, including the UK, the US, but also Bangladesh, Ghana, Kenya, and Nigeria. And this year we've also been working with a museum in Brussels to help them as an organization switch into digital and just function better. Yeah,
and specifically within all of these examples, we've covered brand identity. So we're ready for this.
All of those, exactly. So we're ready for those. So you might have joined the kind of launch event where we were talking about the online thinking and how to make your business digital. Today, we're talking about brand identity, so building and maintaining a visual identity. And all our presentations and all the links that we're sharing, so look at all the amount of links here, they will be shared with you afterwards. So you'll have access to all the examples, and we always have plenty. So what are we going to be talking today about is about the visual language, so understanding it, what it is, the idea of belonging and brand loyalty. Why is it important? What do people mean by it? The advantages of branded content, steps for your visual brand identity. Will give you the steps and the checklist. And from the checklist, you can really create your own brand identity. So branding, what is branding? Because people throw this word around a lot. What we mean by branding is that if your customers and buyers can't see you, they can't buy from you. So you really have to have a visual, physical presence that they can recognize. Oh, that's the brand. I know them, or I've seen them before. So this webinar is really everything you need to start being seen online. So let's think visually throughout this webinar. Yeah. So what, in terms of brand and what goes into it, we've got brand theory. So this is where you know, as your business owner, what is the purpose of the brand? So, and how to position it through your strategy. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, so please don't worry. We need to know the product within the brand as well. So what is it that you sell? We also have to cover visual identity, because now everything is integrated in all of our lives, and it has to be something that is recognizable, and a brand voice as well. So that's important, because that's a unique personality that is expressed through written content. Yes,
so it's slightly different from the visual brand that you will create.
But we want to touch on it a little bit. So examples, let's go straight in. Coca-Cola, right? An amazing example of branding, because they've done some studies that 94% of world population recognizes the brand. And what you recognize is the logo, what you recognize is the red.
Yeah, it's color red, of course.
And look at their feed. Do you see what I mean? That if any of these images appeared on my feed outside of the grid of Coca-Cola, and maybe even if I didn't look at the handle, I would immediately know that it's Coca-Cola, right? And you would as well, because the color is so strongly associated, and the branding, the logo, they've never changed it. We just know it by heart. So that's what branding is. It's not just the product. You just know it. You feel the brand. You recognize it.
You're creating a presence.
Yes, you have an association with it. Another example, hopefully you haven't seen it, and a bit more obscure. A lovely brand here in the UK who does pastel cards, so you can send to friends and family. And you can see that the cards themselves are very pastel-y, but also the whole feed, the whole brand, the whole experience of the brand is very pastel-y as well. So what happens is that when I see a color like this, or a card like, or a post like this without the card show up on my feed, even without looking at the handle, I'm very likely going to know that this is mean mail. So you see, it doesn't have to be one strong color like Coca-Cola. You can have a range of colors that you always work with, so that your audience recognizes you. Another example is an artist called Morag. We like showing her because she's an artist. So you would think, well, she doesn't have a product per se, she does have art, but we like to sort of show you that brand is a little bit more than that, the visual brand, not just the product itself. And it's something that you recognize. So look, her art and her visual identity, her brand, because she has one, are these really strong colors.
Yes, they're very often contrasting in block colors.
Geometrical very often, and just out there. Neon colors all the time. So again, if any of these posts appears in my feed, I will know exactly who that's coming from. So her brand is super strong and super recognizable. So this is the kind of, when we're looking at brand, these were the kind of initial color ideas that you might recognize when you think of branding. Another way to think of branding, and that's also just an introduction, just good examples of good branding, would be style of photography. So Sophie Buhai is a jewelry artist, a jewelry brand, and her style of photography, and that's sort of linking to what Aidan was talking about last week in terms of the strong images and how to create them. And Sophie Buhai chooses close-ups. So you see, her style of photography makes me think of her brand. She could have photographed her jewelry in a completely different way, but when I'm on her feed, I can see a consistency with the stylistic choice, which is the sort of close-up of the jewelry. So it's really quite easy for me to sort of see, oh, okay, this must be Sophie Buhai if an image like this comes onto my feed. Another example in photography would be Marni, so the kind of big Italian brand. And their style of photography is very conceptual, and it is quite artful, actually. So you see, it's a little bit different than the sort of very posed, usual fashion photography. And again, they're adding a little bit of handwritten notes onto it. So that's just something that I recognize and really makes them stand out. So in terms of brand, I'm kind of getting a feel for what it is that they are, because they have a very specific style of photography that they use. So it's not always the colors. Do you see that you can use the colors, but you can also use style photography and logo, obviously, every now and then as well. Another one that we like showing to people to sort of understand in terms of style photography is Lemlem. And what we like about them is that their photography is very sort of relaxed. It's very casual. And you can see it, the pictures are very relaxed. It's very sort of holiday-like. And again, very strong images that you recognize as one brand.
It's also very sunlit as well.
Yeah.
So I've noticed they're not taking any pictures that are out in nighttime, for example. And
that's a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a choice. That's a branding choice, so that we kind of get to know the brand and we know what it stands for. So another way to recognize a brand, and another type that you can use in sort of branding, is the style of layout. We're not going to give you too many examples, but just a few. So Hannah Fiedler recently has changed her layout. So that's an interesting moment to sort of have a look at what happens on the feed. So when you look here, she's sort of just using normal square images. And it's a little bit of a mishmash, different pictures. A lot of people, she's quite sort of community driven, which is really nice. So she features a lot of people, not just models. She features people that she worked with and people from her community. So that's sort of one layout, that you organize your content, you curate, and you pick a sort of maybe some colors in terms of style. But the previous way that she was doing it, and we actually think that this is a shame in a way that she's changed, because this was so recognizable. She's been doing this kind of layout for quite a few years now, maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 years or 4. And the beautiful thing about this layout is that she would always use a lot of white space. Do you see the difference? So this is the new layout, so no white space between the images. And the old layout, there was always white space between the images, maybe a paper clip, maybe a little bit of tape. So immediately, if a picture like this showed up on my feed, I knew that this was Hannah Fiedler. So that was a very strong branding choice. And I think also as customers, we got so used to it and
so accustomed to it,
attached. But everyone, is going on to their journey, and she's sort of transitioning into a different style now. And we're sure it's going to be wonderful as well. Another interesting layout idea might come from Ali Capolino. So she's sort of doing these groups of, she's sort of telling a story with a group of 6 or 9 posts. So you can see here, for example, she's doing this kind of black, gray, charcoal color scheme. And then here you can see a different story. And that's also 6 different images sort of being much more of the countryside, and maybe here in the UK, we're entering into autumn. So it's sort of like a more brownish kind of feeling to it, and leaves are turning red. So that's another 6 posts that she's using. So you can sort of really play with the layout and make it part of your brand, actually. Be conscious of it, make a choice so that people can recognize you. Now, another way to differentiate a brand could be by its message. So for example, Patagonia is really, really incredible as a brand, and they are basically in business to save the planet, and that's what they say. And you can see their message so clearly. Like, you can't really see the product itself. You don't really see the, I don't know, outdoor puffer jackets that you should buy, or
but you just see the outdoors.
You just see the outdoors. So you really just see the love that they have for the planet, which is incredible. And interviews with people who are activists, and just kind of beautiful moments from the planet, so that everyone who's following them, and quite a lot of people are, rather than just buying stuff, they might actually think, okay, what do we need? What can we do that is better for the planet. And that's a message that is really sort of making Patagonia stand out as a brand. Another one would be Airbnb. So that's a very interesting one because obviously Airbnb is an app.
Yes.
You know, it allows you to book a place wherever you want to stay, in people's homes, or you can have a room or a whole flat to yourself or a house. And rather than showing the app or anything digital at all, they're simply featuring their community and people who are part of Airbnb experiences.
And the locations.
And the wonderful, beautiful locations. So you see, that's a very strong brand as well. They're not using anything else there, simply just the kind of stories of who is on Airbnb and where could you stay. It's very dreamy. So the message is really about belonging. It's about sort of trying to make you feel like you can go to any of these places and you're welcome. So that's a wonderful message from Airbnb and very clever branding. Apple, again, Apple is huge. Obviously, a lot of people have iPhones and iPads, and look what they do. They don't show a product, not even once.
Yes.
You never see an iPhone, you never see an iPad or an iMac, nothing. You basically just see beautiful images taken on their product.
Yes. So it's about the creativity that's allowed through their products.
So the branding and the way that Apple positions themselves with the messaging is that it's all about creativity and it's all about super high quality design, and without actually showing us the product, which is amazing. And we think this is a very clever way of doing branding, actually. So you can also recognize a brand by a design. So Chelsea Bravo, for example, has been working with very simple fabric and very simple cuts. And you can see it's just, you know, almost like two pieces of fabric put together. So from a design perspective, I recognize that. And also there has been a collection which has a lot of these kind of beautiful patterns being drawn on the fabric. And then that was something that appeared throughout the feed. So you can see that I would recognize the brand, that the branding is not only the very simple design in terms of the outfit itself, but also the design on top of the outfit. That is just becomes, there's a lot of fabric, whichever collection it is, there's kind of a lot of fabric. So that's really, really wonderful. And then we want to show you final one, when it comes to differentiating a brand by design as well, Come Back as a Flower. So they do a lot of tie-dyes, and that's their sort of style. And you see they're showing quite a lot of their clothes as well, but you can definitely see the kind of tie-dye-like feeling, even if here they're not necessarily wearing anything. It just has this feeling of things being
so blurred and
somehow.
colors kind of mixing together.
So that's you see even something like this, that's not their brand necessarily in terms of the clothing, but
it creates an association.
But it's the colors, right? It's the kind of strange combination of colors that happens when you do tie-dye as well. So that's something for you to keep in mind.
So what is a brand? Lots of things.
Lots of things.
It's a lot of choices that you need to make about your business and how you want to communicate it. Exactly.
So remember when I was talking about Airbnb and I mentioned belonging and how they win at that, that is so important. So when you think of branding, and I promise we will give you the steps step by step of what to do with your logo and your colors and typography, but it's much bigger than that. So how do you want your brand to make people feel? You know, we shown you Lem Lem and it was very light and airy and a lot of sunshine. And then the artist Morag, and it was just colorful and neon. And where would you like to go? Yes. So think about the kind of connection with the audience, and so that they feel they can be part of your journey. Trust, really engage with your community there. The way we've shown you Patagonia, what is the purpose of your brand? Try and talk about the purpose. If you feel most passionate about the purpose, perhaps that's something that the messaging could become the most important thing of your brand. So enrich people's lives, that's so important. And remember to have empathy and just try and be very positive if you can online. That will really, really work. And every brand will gain from positivity.
Yes.
So the online presence that you have, because it's social and on social platforms very often, it really gives people a sense of belonging. So nurture it. So that's why, reply to comments, reply to any messages you're getting, because people are getting used to your brand and they will recognize it and they will recommend you, and they want to feel like they're part of it, especially if they bought something from you. There is an article that we shared before, but you will receive this link as well. Just very quick tips for a digital pivot. So in terms of how to make sure that before you even create belonging, you know exactly which platforms to be on and how to be personable and what content to post and what to look at. So
yes, and all of these tips do help create that sense of belonging as well.
So make sure that you have a look at those tips that we posted earlier. Now, branded content, that's something that we would like you to create after viewing this webinar. And what are the benefits? Well, branding really leads to loyalty, right? Think of Coca-Cola, for example. It's something that you recognize and it feels familiar. And we would love you to get to a place where you also are recognized by not only your customers, but maybe someone who has accidentally seen something on their feed that is yours. And then they see it again and they're like, oh,
it's a point of recognition.
Yes, exactly. So try and think about the fact that people will start recognizing you, and that's only a good thing. And that will bring sales, because loyalty brings sales. Now, if it's an interesting content, that invites curiosity from your customers. So they'll be like, oh, I wonder what this brand is up to. They've posted this really interesting post a month ago, and I haven't really seen what they've been up to recently. Let me just have a look. Very important is that faster communication of your values is actually done through visual language. People would read the message visually quicker than via text. So for example, with Patagonia, I didn't read any of the posts individually, did I, when I showed them to you? But I got the message just from looking at the posts. So just from images, just from the visual communication, I got the values of the brand. I didn't have to read a whole statement. And that's such an incredible thing for you to go through. Consistency, that builds trust, which means more sales, and also branded content really does create emotional connections. There was a study done on the emotional impact of branded storytelling, and 62% of people said that they were more likely to have a positive reaction to branded content because it felt more professional and it felt like something they might recognize and something that feels cohesive, rather than a random piece of content. Now, very important, we want to talk about the website and social media, and social media especially. Remember, this is an extension of your brand. So if you have a branded website already, your social media needs to mirror it.
Yes.
Customers really expect this kind of extension of brand. So when they go from your website, it has to be seamless. They have to recognize that it's your brand. And ideally, because you want to grow on social, your posts and your social media needs to look good, and the content needs to be shareable. So have a look at some examples. So Bode, for example, that's their website. It's a New York-based brand. You can see that they're using this sort of MDF board behind the pictures and behind the product photos as well. So you can see it here. And then when we go on to their Instagram, it has a similar palette in terms of colors, but it also has the same feeling of using the board and using the same kind of room, just to make me feel like there's a continuation of it. I think that's very, very, very important, that going from the website, I have a seamless experience going into a social.
There's continuity.
Exactly. And I just feel as a customer, like I know exactly where I am and what I'm dealing with. And another example, Mira Mikati has a lot of colorful, beautiful, fun creations and colors. And when I go onto her Instagram, it reflects it perfectly. look at all these colors that are sort of woven into posts that are other content, but I just recognize that this is definitely her brand. And that's how it should be done. That's definitely the way forward. Another thing that we would like to mention to you is now the main bit, which is the visual brand identity. And these are the elements. So by the end of the session, you'll be an expert in it. So you'll know it all. And we're going to show you examples for each. So your visual brand identity has to translate, as I just mentioned, across all mediums. So you have to cover the website, you have to cover the social media, newsletter, WhatsApp messages. Make sure that you always have the same visuals that you use. So the same elements, and these are the 8 elements that we want to mention to you. So logo is the primary symbol of a brand. Make sure that you use it. Always high quality, right? We keep talking about this all the time. That's very important, that it is high quality, and make sure that you use it across all the channels as well. So that's very important. So let us show you Airbnb. So this is Design Studio, who designed the logo for Airbnb. You can see how they've connected it. So people, places, love, A for Airbnb, and that's how they've come up with it. And that's a logo that they use throughout, the app, the website, all the messaging, all the emails. The logo is there all the time. You can create yours on Canva. We will be talking about Canva a few times. If you go onto Canva, you have a section here called logo. And then if you click on the logo, you can actually have a look at many different templates. And then if you click on one, you can edit it. So here, for example, I can say Agatha brand, natural makeup. I can move this around. I can change the colors. So it really is helpful if you don't want to work with a graphic designer. Using Canva, you can actually create your own brand.
And almost most importantly, you can download it as a high quality file as well. So it's very easy to have those high quality images across all of your platforms.
That's super important. Thank you, Robbie. So another thing that is important after logo would be typography and the font. And I'm just going to go through them all first, and then I'm going to show you the individual examples. So we have the logo, then we have the fonts, then we need to have the colors. So what colors represent the brand with the color codes, and we'll show you in a second. Then we have to think of what images and photography or illustration represent the brand. Then potentially infographics, icons and symbols. Again, we'll show you the examples of additional graphics. Think about video, think about motion, interactive elements. How can they be on brand so it's not random and jarring if someone posts something, you post it on your feed and it's completely off brand. It's a video and you just didn't think about how to make it on brand before. Website obviously has to be on brand with your social media. And then if you do have a shop, let's think about the interiors as well. So let's just go into some examples. So we talked about the logo, and let's now have a look at typography. So that's the font. Headspace is a very good example. So when you look at their branding, they use many different colors, but they use the same type of font throughout. And that's very consistent. The colors might change in their case, but they use the same font. This is their brand font. So remember that as an example. Another account that we really like showing actually is Vocal Type. This is specifically an account for fonts actually and inspiration, so you can have a look. They have many different fonts, but look how they keep it on brand by using the black background.
Yes.
So although they have different fonts, the black background keeps it on brand. So I know that this is definitely Vocal Type. Just a very simple way to recognize it. We have a resource that we would like to give you, which is a font shop. It's a wonderful resource where you can have a look at different fonts. And it's just fantastic really to just have an idea of different thicknesses of them and what are they called, and is there something that you like?
It also puts them all together so you can directly compare. That's always really helpful, especially when you're coming to decide fonts, because looking at them as a singular font, you kind of lose track of how you felt about the previous one. So it's always good to compare.
And you can sort of pick, if you want to see A, B, C, D, you can click on that, and it should update. I think it's because we're screen sharing, it's sort of being a little bit slower. But you know, that kind of visually gives you an idea of what you could be working with. And ideally you would pick 2 to 3 fonts, not more than that. So try and always stick to the same font so that we can recognize your brand. If you want to work with 2 fonts, Google actually has this really nice font pair website where you can have a look at which fonts work well together. So you have examples of, say, Railway and Nunito Sans, and they are saying that these work well together. So if you don't want to spend too long trying to find a font that suits you the most individually, you can actually go on Font Pair and have a look of what has been decided by designers that work well together already, and see examples. And you can use most of these fonts, especially Google fonts, for free, which is wonderful. So make sure you pick your fonts and try and stick to them. Let's move on to colors. So make sure you pick your colors as well. And you can have your main 1 or 2 colors, and then you can have what we call an accent color. And we're going to show it to you in a second as well in brand guidelines. So Treatwell is a good example because they have, again, it's quite colorful, but this kind of blue, green, orange, red, kind of deeper blue. You sort of park them there in your head. And then when you go onto their social media, you see that it's the same green and the same turquoise and the same dark blue. So it's kind of, again, do you see, it's all connected, it's all on brand, and it's such a nice experience for a customer. It actually is very, I don't know, it just makes you feel safe.
It actually means that you can also be a bit more versatile with the content that you're posting as well, because you always have that uniform look just to bring it back to your base.
Exactly. Another brand that works with color quite well, look at this sort of like peach color, and then I mean, if this is peach, then I don't know what I should call this one. Pale orange, and then like bright orange and green, and then again, once we are on their Instagram, it's the same. You see, they're the same colors. So I really know the brand. I get to feel what the brand is, and I kind of expect these colors from them. So if they were to all of a sudden post only black and white,
it would be jarring.
it would be
strange.
So you see, make sure this is to help you have a bond with your customer. This is why it's so important that you really think about it and only pick a few fonts and stick with them, and only pick a few colors and stick with them. Another example, you can, for example, pick only very subtle colors. You see, this is very gray, very muted, very calm. And then if we go onto their Instagram, it's the same. It's very muted, it's very gray, it's very calm. If they all of a sudden started posting pictures like the jewelry brand that we've shown you, that would have been very strange, and that wouldn't be on brand, and that wouldn't be their brand. And that's how we recognize that cold laundry is cold laundry, because of the colors that they used and the photography as well. Moving on, still in color, but you can have an account that is mainly kind of black and white. You see, they have color occasionally. This is very gray, charcoal, and there's a lot of sort of black and white photography as well, but also black and white actual fashion wear. If you don't want black and white, then we said you could pick one color only. So you can identify a color, because we've shown you so many colors. Then we're showing you just working with 2, black and white. Then you can pick one color and make it yours, and that's going to be your main one. Or you can pick 3 colors, for example. So Mother Root is a brand that mainly uses brown, kind of orange, and gray. And you can see it here on the website. So these are the predominant colors that she uses. And if I go on to her Instagram, it's the same story, right? I just mentioned the kind of orange, the gray, and the brown. It's the same colors. And look how lovely her account is, if I look at it. And if it appears on my feed, I know exactly who this is. And I know exactly, even if it's a picture like this, isn't that interesting? Because that picture doesn't have per se any branding, right?
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't have their logo. it doesn't have its
it doesn't have
text,
the product.
it doesn't have the product, it doesn't have the exact color that she uses. But because she created this brand, which I recognize that this combination of color,
this idea of a glowing warmth,
it's Mother Root.
Yes.
And that's just perfect, that you don't need to post product all the time. And we always tell you, please don't do it. Please don't have just a catalog of pictures. Please post behind the scenes, your location, people around you, your inspiration, some art, you know, a lot of different content categories. And if you do post inspiration, you can also try and make it so that it is a little bit more on brand.
Yes.
So for example, when we work, our Instagram has different colors, but when we do something to do with graphics, like you can see on our presentation, it's always black and white, always. That's just what we do. And you recognize it, that this is us. And here the same, you recognize this warmth on a picture that isn't necessarily branded, but by the context it is. So how to find your colors? We're going to give you 2 resources that hopefully you like a lot. And colors, you really like it because it's quite fun. You can sort of start a generator or explore trending palettes. You can click on one, and it just gives you all the different colors put together. You don't have to pick, say, this range, but you might just say, oh, I really like this orange and I like this green. Now, do you see what's happening here? If I were to tell you that my colors are orange and green, how do you know that this is the orange I mean, and not this one, or not that one? So you have to be super, super specific when you pick your color, and always write down this number that comes with a color. So that's a hex code. And this number, once you have it, you can share it with everyone, and people will know that this is the exact orange you mean, or this is the exact green you mean. Because if you just say to someone that your brand color is red, they will have no idea which red you mean. But if you tell them my red is 9D0208, that's the hex code, every person will be able to use that code in Canva as well. So in Canva, you can put the color code so that you use the exact red, for example, that you have picked for your brand.
So if you don't use the specific code, you'll end up with branded content that'll have very minor or very large differences in the color, and it'll be very jarring for people, and it ruins the trust almost. It doesn't seem as professional.
It doesn't seem professional, no, because if you have 7 different greens, but we kind of know that you just want one green, but maybe you can't always get the right green, then I think it's a bit of a shame. So look, you can use different colors outside of your brand colors. Like we've shown you many examples. You don't have to do a Coca-Cola that every single post needs to have your brand red, for example. But have a core idea of what your colors would like to be in the brand guidelines. And we will show it to you in a second, how a brand guideline look, and we'll tell you how to write one. And it can be just 1 page, so please don't worry. Canva also has a color generator. That one is really fun, actually. So we'll share the link, is that you upload an image, whatever it is. So it could be your collection, for example, and Canva will pick the colors from this image, and then will give you, again, you see the most important thing is this code here. So once you know this code, you'll know that every time you want to use your brand mint, you'll be able to use it, and it's always going to be the same. So this is really, really important. Now, in terms of, so look, we covered the logo with the Airbnb, typography, we just talked about colors and the color codes, and now we're going to talk about the images, photography, and the illustration. So that's one element that is important for you, how to style your images so that it is on brand and what they mean. So for example, Tommy Jeans, when you look at their images, I know immediately what's happening here. This is Gen Z, and I am not part of Gen Z. I'm too old. I'm a millennial. And it's interesting because this is how they communicate to us, the audience, that this is what they're about. This is what their brand is, and this is what their branding is, and this is who it's for. So I immediately know, okay, great, this is their brand.
Yes.
And I can perhaps if I want to engage with them, but I kind of understand that if it's not my cup of tea, I sort of know why. So that's a really, really good example, I think, of sort of images and how you can communicate your brand with an image and selection of images. The other example would be Mira. Really fantastic in terms of showing the location. So that's very important. Again, that's something that makes this brand stand out. So that brand is based in Gaza, and I can see that, you know, it's very unique for us because we're in London. We don't have access to that kind of landscape and that kind of environment. This is a very unique place, and it has a certain feel to it. You know, sometimes it's not as obvious with a brand as just a color. Sometimes it's more of a feeling and a stylistic choice or a photography choice in terms of location. So very, very beautiful example in terms of photography choice for brand. Again, Tala is also a very good example. It's a brand that works with Lebanese and Syrian artisans. And again, you can see the kind of pictures that they use. It's very much about working with hands. And it's very much about sort of featuring people because they're working with artisans. And it's very kind of warm, isn't it? And inviting, actually. And again, working with hands to sort of show the artisan aspect of it. So through the photography, you are really pushing the brand message quite nicely. So that's a very beautiful example. That one is incredible too. Think about it. You know, you can look at it and see, oh, okay, it's just, you know, fashion and clothes. But actually what they're doing here is creating a brand, because when you look closely, all the images are quite sort of close up in a way, and they really concentrate on the structure and on the form. So all of a sudden, what I realized looking at this brand is that this is very form heavy, this is very sculptural.
Yes, I think a lot of the images rely on this high contrast as well between sort of light and dark areas within the image. Very similar to how you can see in the design of the dresses.
Exactly. So there's sort of the block straps here. Actually, it's a good example. You can see the block straps, but you can also see the block of lights, and you know, the images that they use are very geometrical, but their pieces are geometrical as well. So you see, they've created branding by emphasizing certain aspects of their brand with images like this. You know, this is not their brand, but it really makes me think of their brand in this kind of very sculptural, structural way. So very important what you can do with photography. If you are a homeware brand, just an example, Feldspar Studio, we really, really love them. They do very simple, look how simple these ceramics are. It's always white, and they have either a blue rim or a red rim. And often actually, when they're using it with the blue rim in the photography, they would sort of have shades of blue here sometimes. And then when they're showing the red rim, they would be using red as well. So it's such a simple way to just make this connection, you know, make us think of their brand in a specific way, of these two colors mainly, but also the sort of calmness, because look, there's not much going on with this. I mean, that's the entire collection really. They always just do white with like little rims. Sometimes they have gold for special occasions. And they're not ashamed of the fact that this is supposed to be soothing. This is supposed to be calm. Their brand is about simplicity and a kind of catching a breath, really. Yeah,
it's about the simple life.
Exactly. So they communicate their brand message through the photography choices. And an example of illustration as well. So this is a brand called Tea Collection for cute children. And what they do to emphasize the brand and to emphasize that they work with illustration, they post sometimes just illustration itself.
So not on the dresses, not on the clothing, just the artist's work.
Just the illustration. So don't be afraid of that. You know, show us the essence of your brand. It doesn't have to be product always. If you work with illustration, show us just illustration, and it doesn't have to be only your illustration. It can be inspiration that you found and that you really, really like. So we also want to show you some stock images and some sort of resources. So we know that Getty is one of the biggest ones,
yeah.
and iStock. If you ever need to use stock photography, it's absolutely fine, but it's just a bit boring, the Getty one and iStock. So I don't know whether some of you might have heard of Pexels, but I have typed in nature. For example, this is all free, and most of their images are created by photographers who are not just stock photographers, stock library photographers. So they tend to be a little bit more personal and a little bit softer. And a bit more artistic. So a bit more like you could have taken it, or a photographer you commissioned could have taken them, rather than a stock photographer. Another resource would be Unsplash, very similar, again, just a little bit more personable. A bit more authentic. There is also this artist photographer called Jay, and on his website he actually has a section for free pictures, and they're very beautiful. You know, you can feel that this is not just stock photography. So if you need sort of any nature ones, any texture, for example, or black and white, that's where you can definitely go. And he has videos as well. Look how stunning the clouds are. So if you need any colors maybe that are in that kind of tone, you can use these pictures. You can just give him credit, but they're free to use. This is a subscription. So if you need a lot of images, perhaps, or have a very specific need, devtothestockphoto.com is where you would go. And they have very highly curated, very beautiful images available. And for patterns, that's also an interesting one. Is the pattern library. So they have different patterns that you can work from and work with and use. And again, this is free. So it's actually quite fun to sort of scroll through and just see different patterns. So if you're into patterns, or if your brand is illustration pattern heavy, that could be a really beautiful resource. And then again, going back to Canva, whichever template you're in, you can change that picture and put another picture in, and Canva has its own library of images that you can use for free as well. So you see, just within 2 seconds, I've changed it for you already. So final examples in terms of infographics, icons, and symbols. This is a nice example. Design Studio, we've shown you their work for Airbnb, and this is the work that they've done for AO, which is an electronics company. As you can see, a kettle, a fan, loudspeaker, and look what's happening here. Look at the logo, which is AO and the kind of smiley face, and you can see that the O is sort of recreated by the bubbles here. You can see that the things around, the kind of icons around the fan is the smile, and you can see the sort of same nod to the logo recreated here by the sound waves. Exactly. So it's really clever how you can utilize aspects of your logo, of your icon, and try and use it in branding a bit more. And you can see it here again. You see it's the same connection to the logo, these little things that come out of the circle. And that's the sort of smiley face from AO. So there's a real connection between the icon as well. Amazing resource for icons themselves, the Noun projects. If you need any illustrations or icons, definitely make sure that you have a look. And then moving on to video, we just want to show you Airbnb again. You see they're using the same colors. That's what we meant with your video. Make sure that it's branded as well. They're using their usual color. They're using the font that they have always used. And then at the end as well here, you can see their logo. It's always the same logo. And it's just very important that you keep it all on brand, even if it's video. It's so important for people to recognize that it's you. And if you like GIFs, that's an example of sites for Giphy. Yeah, for GIFs. So Giphy.com. You know, some brands, especially Gen Z brands, would probably really want to use that kind of content. And that's something that you can share as well on your social media. Yes. So final bit, interiors. A brand called Age, now they're actually doing homeware products, very beautiful. But before that, they were doing fashion. And the colors, they've always kept the colors very warm and
Yes.
terracotta. You can see all their collections had similar colors. And when you look at their shop inside, they reflected that. So you see the connection between their brand and their Instagram. You can see that even the walls are on brand in this one. And you can see here that even the grass that they've added is on brand, that it sort of has a conversation with the very beautiful muted terracotta colors in the actual shop. And here again, you see there is an orange, a bowl with oranges, because they work with a lot of orange, and that's on brand, that's on purpose. This isn't a random bowl of oranges. They've placed it because they want you to make a connection with Arge, with the sort of beautiful orange colors that they always work with. You can also be more interested in textures. And for example, this artist and maker works in wood, metal, and clay. And you can see here the way he would pair his work is with the sort of textured paintings that are not his, for example, but just to make you notice the texture of his work a little bit more. So you can see that's a very clever way of doing it. So think about it. Would you lead with a color, or would you lead with a texture? What is your brand, really? And the final one, Simone, her work is very white, and her space, her shop, is very white as well. So you can see everything is white, and she keeps her Instagram very white too. So this is branding. That's the kind of overall idea of it. So now your own brand identity, you have 4 steps of how to do it. You need to know your brand. That's very important. Who you are, and who, you know, how is your business special? Yes,
what makes it stand out, and why did you start that business? What gap in the market were you trying to fulfill?
And know your audience. Who's your customer? Is it Gen Z? Is it men? Is it women? Is it children? Because you'll be speaking differently and using different images and different colors for different audiences. Then you have to create your visual identity, and we will show you the brand guidelines now as well. And then we need to talk very briefly about your brand voice and what do we mean by it. So let's just quickly have a look at the brand guidelines and what they actually are. So we have a logo. Then we have a more complicated logo for us. Sometimes we use this, which is our full name. Then these are actually not our colors, that's our client's colors, but we're sort of trying to give you an idea. Then you list your colors. What are the core colors with the codes as well? Accent colors as well. And typography. So what are the fonts that you want to be using? Very important.
So it's almost like an instruction manual.
Yes, exactly. And then you show images that you want and how you want your brand to be represented via the images. And it's the same here, this link of Google, how they developed their brand, what colors they've used. You can see, you know, we take it for granted now, but someone had to think about these colors. And again, all of them have color codes as well. Another example of a brand guideline, a very simple one, is, you know, you've got the logo here, you say what it is, you've got the fonts here, make sure you stick to them, and you have a few colors, make sure that you stick to them. And another example, logo and how to use it. You can also mention in your brand guidelines logo and how not to use it. So don't twist it upside down, don't use pink, don't use yellow.
Yes, and that's very important if you're ever to collaborate with a graphic designer or another brand, for example, and say maybe they decide to turn your logo upside down, and if you don't specify exactly how you want it to be used, that might happen.
Yes, and you definitely don't want that to happen. And you make sure that you have these colors that you always use and always the same fonts. We are going to give you a lot of examples that you can go through on the links as well. So there are many different brands here, 21 brands. You can see how they have done their brand guidelines. So you will have access to this PDF presentation. So there are some questions for you in terms of knowing your brand. Make sure that you think about it before you go into the actual brand guidelines. Think about your audience. Again, some questions to help you here. The actual brand guidelines, so that's the visual identity that we just showed you. Stick to it. It's super consistent, it's super important. make sure that you are consistent on all channels, social, website, WhatsApp, video. Try to have the same social media handles. That's also important. So that across Facebook and Instagram, it's always the same name. And write them down, these rules. It literally can be just this one sheet where you say, okay, this is what my brand is and how I'm special. This is my logo. These are my fonts that I'm using. Let's say 3. These are my colors with the color codes. Let's say pick 3 and 3 additional ones. That's the kind of images that I want. For example, only close-ups of hands. This is how I want the kind of social media to look in terms of templates, maybe.
Yes, and you can also get banner images for Facebook and for Twitter, LinkedIn, for example. And
if you want to, you can say, I never want you to put my logo on black. For example, you can have rules like this as well.
And this is fantastic for when your business is growing and you're taking people on board. Maybe at some point you won't be looking after your social media because you'll have someone else doing it. But when it comes to training them and telling them exactly what your brand is about, you can just say, here's the document.
Yes. So that's really important that you can share that. Now, brand voice is something extra, and I'll just cover it in a minute. It's to do with how you communicate online. So we've talked about the visual. We won't go too much into brand voice, but we'll give you just very quick examples. So Victoria's Secret, for example, is an underwear brand, and they say very relaxed, friendly things like say hello to all things lush, luxe, and laid back that will take you from home to bed and back again. So really relaxed, really, really friendly. Same here. Don't sweat making it to the dry cleaner. You can care for your 100% washable silk from the comfort of your home. Very approachable. So that's one voice. So let's just concentrate on how they speak. And Chanel obviously is a high sort of luxury, sophisticated brand, and they reflect it in the way they say. So the technical sophistication of a long down jacket with a removable hood meets the warmth of a cashmere look in a Chanel Coco. You see, it's a story. It's a much more sophisticated,
much more elaborate,
longer text. And again here, the skyline and radiant light of the urban skyline. You know, it's very different than come over for a sleepover kind of thing. So for you just to have a look, you can have a look at Monzo, who have made their brand guidelines and their tone of voice available. So you can see what rules they have. They're a bank. So for example, for them, it's very important that they only use language we, the audience, uses. So they don't talk about anything overly complicated, and they call technical things stuff, actually, even in their tone of voice. And a bank normally wouldn't be so friendly.
No, exactly.
So that's their brand. They want to be friendly and approachable. And Mailchimp, who you might know from sending newsletters, again, we're plain spoken, we're genuine, we're translators, our humor is dry. So very, very specific rules of how they want to communicate. The most important thing to remember is you need to be open. Your identity will change and evolve because culture happens and life happens and trend happens. So you make sure that you're open to it, but try and have a set logo, colors and fonts at least. But things are shifting, so be open that in a few years you might want to change. We're sharing with you this checklist. If you go through these steps here at the end of this PDF, you'll have the brand guidelines. So you'll just have to read it and make sure that you answer the questions and you'll have the brand guidelines. So please, please, please have a look. Thank you so much for your time. The next webinar with us is on December the 7th. We will send you all the links like we said we would. And if there are any questions, let us know. I don't know if there are. Have there been any?
So Salma actually raised a point about finding a place that she can look at templates. So it might be worth pulling up to Canva again.
So can you read the question?
So Salma says, I found that my page has very nice designs, so on her Instagram, but with the template that she uses, the dresses are sometimes lost. So do you have any other places that you can look for templates?
Great. Well, yes. So if it's Instagram post, for example, but it can be any template. So look on Canva, which is brilliant. You go on templates, and then thank you for that question, by the way. That's amazing. you can have a template for anything social media related. So an Instagram story, Instagram post, Facebook post. You can have a template for presentations and websites and logo and business card. But let's go into an Instagram post, for example. So you click on that. And the beautiful thing about it is that you can pick, let's say, this template, and you click on it. You say, customize this template. And then when it loads, you can replace, for example, this picture with the picture of your own brand. You can say things here that are on brand, and maybe your name of the brand, or maybe here you can put your logo. Now, the most important thing to make sure that this template doesn't look like a random template, but is on brand, is that you would change the font to the font that is your brand font. So let's say you've picked Anton. So you will make sure that every time you use a template, you change these fonts to Anton, because we've decided that Anton is one of your main type fonts. And then you will change this color to a color code that is yours. So here you can put a color code. Do you remember some of them were something like 90DCF, and I don't know one on top of my head, but it would change the background color to the exact color that you've picked to be your brand color. So I hoped, Salma, that this answers your question.
I'll also add, with the templates, make sure that you're choosing one that has very clear, that very clearly allows the image to be shown, and because that is actually much more beneficial for social media. If you're using templates that maybe have a slight gradient over the image, those don't tend to do so well.
Yeah. So are there any other questions? Or have we had...
So no more questions coming through the chat just yet.
I hope everyone is following all those tips, because you really, I don't even know how to put, as we say in fashion buying, dumbed it down in a good way. I mean, step by step, you couldn't ask for more detailed steps than that. So thank you so much for that. That was amazing. And I know a lot of people, it's interesting, the comments, and I've been getting a lot of Instagram messages. That's something everyone keeps saying, come look at my Instagram. Can you tell me what I need to do? And you literally just said it. So those of you that are struggling with color palettes, struggling with the process, sorry, my neighbors are doing construction. I don't know if you can hear that, apologies. You literally, that's how you do it. You don't have to think it, really. You showed everyone how to do it. And then next week we have Aiden again, I think, who's going to get more into photography and videography.
Yes.
That's really, really good. And then the following week, Britta will kind of show us now how all the retailers, basically how you utilize all this now to start really having a good retail and wholesale model as well. So any feedback, keep looking, everyone. We'll be making some announcements as well. We're going to be adding some more items to our program. Yay. And yeah, that's it. So thank you all. And thank you, Agatha and Robbie, for starting and introducing yourselves and everything. I was trying to... So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone. And it's nice to see the same faces here too, as well. Not faces, but names as well every week too.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure, and such an important thing to think about when you have your own business, but also incredibly fun. Wouldn't you say, Tara? Like, this is just joy to be thinking about fonts and colors, and it's so fun.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, because I always have to talk about the boring stuff like budgets and a markup. This is why we like what we do, because of this stuff, the real stuff, the creative part of it. And that's right. That's what you guys have found. You know, what we've all worked with so many different businesses. And when we overthink it is where we get into trouble. At the end of the day, it's just designing it in just a different way.
But really enjoying it, but really, really just having a moment with your own brand and thinking, oh, how can I make it better? And just having rules saves you so much time. I think that's another thing that is very, very important, because if you don't have the fonts and colors set, then every single time you post, you have to think from scratch, what font will I use and what color will I use? But if you have already decided, then it saves you so much time because you know already what you're using. You just need to kind of put it together, and it probably saves you hours.
Yes.
Hours and major mistakes from a branding point of view. And then that way, then it's so streamlined, right? And then a lot of us work with other people as well. Once you have that document, there's no confusion, right?
Exactly.
That's the biggest thing, right? If you're working with a web developer, if you're working with an intern, you give them that document and there is no guessing, right?
Yeah.
They don't have to go in your brain.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm
Oh,
so,
perfect.
I'm so sorry. I have to jump off because now they're drilling behind me, but you can keep speaking. I'm sorry.
We're going. I don't think there are any more questions for us.
There's none more.
Okay, no more. But you can, if you have any questions, do get in touch with us. Rand Studio LDN on Instagram. And is there one?
Oh yes, we do have a couple of questions coming through. Fantastic. So
thank you.
So what are the characteristics of Instagram posts as distinct from Facebook, for example?
Oh, Doris, thank you so much. That's a great question. So right now, you don't actually have to create a huge difference between Instagram and Facebook. It's the same company. And in terms of brand, to be honest, people want to check out your Instagram more. Facebook works if it's a closed group and a lot of people can communicate, but it's mainly Instagram that has to be very carefully curated. So when you're thinking about creating a post, think about Instagram first, and then you can reuse almost the same post on Facebook, but lead with Instagram thinking. The reason why Instagram is so visual is because it gives me a preview of your brand, you know, on the first squares that you see, right? I don't have to go into your website and click on different things or scroll past on Facebook and see individual posts separately. I can see 6 posts all together.
Yes.
So that's quite powerful, actually. And that's why lead with thinking about your content for Instagram, and then you can adapt it to Facebook. With Facebook, maybe a few more words on the actual post might work better for engagement, but on Instagram, try and keep it clean if you can. So
lead with the image.
Lead with an image. So on Instagram, have an image, or have in Canva create a beautiful background that has nice branded color, and you can write some small text that is also in your branded font, and you know, every now and then you can have photography, and every now and then you can have like a slide that you have created in Canva. On Facebook, it's okay to have an image and text over it, but on Instagram, unless it's done very well, try not to do it. Try to lead with a strong image, and Aidan is amazing, so he'll help you loads with that. Okay, so is there any other ones? Yes.
So Grace has said that she's struggling with the whole process, but she's learned how to go about it, which is fantastic.
Great, Grace, thank you so much. The most important thing is go and get this PDF presentation. And really all you need, I promise you, is to think about the logo, establish it, to think about the colors, establish them, think about the fonts. That's the core, and just write it down, and you'll feel so much better about it. And then you can go through the checklist that we have given you, where we also make you think about your audience a little bit before that process and about your brand. Just go through the questions. They're very gentle questions. We will never check your answers. This is just for you. Just make yourself a nice cup of tea and find half an hour to just dive into your brand and enjoy it. Yes. And ask questions about, who am I doing this for? What is special about me? How do I want to communicate? What kind of consistency do I want to have visually? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. So what else is there?
So I believe we have come to the end, but a lot of people saying, oh, perfect.
Oh, you use Canva.
So Salma
wonderful.
is using Canva.
Great.
Perfect.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And please, as I said, you can definitely get in touch with us if you have any other questions.
Yes.
And we'd love to help you. But
yes, and we've listed it in the chat that you can contact us if you'd like more help on our Instagram page.
But I promise the checklist that we've made, we actually spend a lot of time on it. So do have a look. Because it will help you a lot as a process. It's almost as if we're there with you, holding your hand and being like, this is okay, you can do this.
But this is super fun. This is the best part.
This is so creative. And if you have your own brand, that means that you are creative. So you'll probably really enjoy this process, and it will save you time. And it's joy.
It'll save you time and resources.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, thank you so much again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.